If you missed last night's game, you might be skeptical when we tell you that the Nashville Predators snapped the league-leading Winnipeg Jets' 11-game win streak. When we tell you how the Predators did it and who they had to do it without, well, that's really going to knock your socks off.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off our Friday. We made it to Friday episode, shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio, and friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Crime, Emma, is the word of the day because Juuse Saros absolutely stole a game last night. We're going to talk about Saros's incredible performance in net and what it perhaps reminds some of his harshest critics of, that they have the right to remain silent. But of course, there's plenty more to talk about when it comes to the Nashville Predators. Quite frankly, their shocking win over the Winnipeg Jets last night. We're going to talk about some other heroes of the game, and we're going to look to the weekend games coming up. Before we dive into all of that, though, we do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Well, Emma, you and I were walking into Bridgestone Arena last night having a conversation about the game. And friends, Emma and I are hockeymists. We really are. I am a hockeyimist. Emma participates on a podcast with a hockeyimist. So she is.
I indulge your hockeyism.
You do. You're so kind about it, too, because even sometimes I'm like, Anne, come to the world where hockey players are. But last night, even the hockeyimist in me was like, well, Emma, we're going to have to sit through 60 minutes of a disaster on waiting to unfold because, friends, for those of you who may not know, Roman Yosi out last night, upper body injury listed as day to day, but of course that's a kind of a fluid situation. Emma, I would say you and I were not expecting to walk out of Bridgestone feeling the way we did.
I believe the phrase that I used upon entering Bridgestone Arena was that I would rather step on 1,000 Legos than watch whatever was about to unfold there. And
that is, in fact, what you said.
That is what I said. And I was wrong. But you know what? The more I thought about it, I'm like, this was the classic Sure game. Sure. Of course, they end the Winnipeg Jets, franchise record 11-game win streak as the 30th place team in the league right now. Of course they do that. Sure. So I'm like, if this is not just indicative of this entire season and how none of it makes any sense, then I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, we're in a metaverse, you all. This is a there has been a string off the regular verse.
We live in a simulation. I don't know. Maybe there's a glitch in the simulation right now. Sure.
Nothing makes sense this season. And then just when you figure out, nope, this team just can't win. They beat the number one team in the league on their, like Emma said, they had an 11-game win streak going. And the Nashville Predators roll in. No Roman Yosi. Of course, we know Jeremy Lauzon and Adam Wilsby out. So they have pieced together, like an old quilt, friends, unmatched materials and called it a defensive core. Threw it out on the ice with some of the best offensive weapons the league has to offer this season. And the Predators win 2-1. Sure. Yeah. Emma, is sure your one word, or Do you want to try something different? It's up to you. Let's say it's accurate.
It is accurate, but just to mix it up a little bit, I'm gonna add a different word, a different S word, not the S word that I thought that I would be using to describe this game, let me tell you. But the S word I'm going with is special, as in teams, special teams. And you mentioned it already, but the performance of Juuse Saros in this game,
Unreal.
he is special. And I mean that not in the way that I tell my dog that she's special, because that's how I tell her she's a little weird. But I mean special because, like, the things he does and the
Unreal.
value he has for this team. I walked out last night, walked out of the arena with Ben Vanderklok, the goaltending coach, and I just kind of looked at him and I said, he played his ass off tonight. And he goes, yeah. And, just how he's looked since returning from the Four Nations break. Again, I still maintain that he did not look bad before the Four Nations break, but the team did.
Right.
I just think that his, and Benny agreed with me that he has just kind of hit a new level. This was like elite Juuse Saros that we've seen since the break. And if the Preds are, with the, I would put air quotes around defensive core that they have right now, especially without Roman Yosi, they're going to need elite Juuse Saros. So that was just really good to see.
Yeah, that was one of those games. Now, Winnipeg did not start Connor Hellebuyck. This was their second game on a back-to-back, and I think all of the Winnipeg Jets fans want us to point that out. This was not Saros versus Hellebuyck, but I will say this. Can you imagine if this was a Saros versus Hellebuyck game? Because the goaltending meltdown, just because incredible what we saw. And look, Eric Comrie had a great game. He had a great game as well, but it wasn't Hellebuyck, but Juuse Saros, friend, just no words for what we saw. My one word is please pass the Kraft barbecue sauce. Not one word, but I used to eat Kraft barbecue sauce on everything growing up. My favorite snack growing up was potato chips dipped in barbecue sauce. That was like, I would eat just so much of that stuff, but I am using it in the context of, let's just say, Emma, for example, if there were somebody who pulled like a stat about Juuse Saros and said Juuse Saros is the worst professional athlete that the Nashville sports landscape has, I would say, A, I hope your mom still cuts up your meat really, really small bites. And B, here's the Kraft barbecue sauce, because, friend, it may taste like chicken, but what you eat is crow. You're eating crow. Because for all of the Saros doubters, sit there in your wrongness and be wrong.
I would also say, to the whole, like, comparing to other athletes in Nashville professional sports, to that I would say, have you seen Will Levis?
He was in the game last night.
He was. And I can tell you what, he chugged a beer better than he can throw a football.
Well, he threw some T-shirts. He did throw some T-shirts. Jeffrey Simmons was there. Will Levis was there. Who else? Spears. Tajay Spears was at the game last night.
No, I'm surprised. I'm surprised none of those T-shirts got intercepted. But
I'm surprised one of them didn't end up down somebody's throat. But here we are. But for the people, and look, I get it. Saros maybe has not performed up to expectation, but for anybody who has watched this Nashville Predators team game in and game out, like Emma and I have, if your takeaway is that Juuse Saros is the biggest problem on the Nashville Predators and the worst professional athlete in Nashville sports, or the most disappointing, well, last night somebody served you up a giant plate of crow, put some barbecue sauce on it, and sit silently in your wrongness and eat it. We, of course, always ask our insiders for their one word after a game. And friends, it's like Emma. We thought it was going to be one S word, but it was a different S word for this game. Dustin's one word for tonight is a quote from a world famous doctor, Dr. Evil. When the Jets thought they'd roll into our house and get that 12th straight win, how about no? Saros was lights out. Another insider's one word, juice. At the beginning of the year, we all thought this team had multiple guys that can win games by themselves, like Yosi, Forsberg, Stamkos. Turns out it's only juice. Another insider said, as you are apt to say about this season, sure. Sure. Oh, Macy's one word. Macy, we are here with you. My one word for tonight is confused. You mean to tell me this team struggled against the Sharks and the Blackhawks, the two bottom teams in the league, but can play a well-connected, firing on all cylinders game against the number one Jets twice and break their 11-game win streak? Okay, sure. We're building a legacy, Emma, the legacy of sure. That's what we're doing. Coming up, we're going to talk a little bit more about Juuse Saros and his outstanding performance in this game. But there were some other unsung heroes that we need to talk about up and down the lineup. We're also going to tell you about the moment that may have changed everything in this game. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there is no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss that opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. You'll love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether you are backing your team for a late game rally or you're picking a player to hit a clutch three, you will never feel like you've missed out on your chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Emma, we are quite unexpectedly friends talking about a Nashville Predators 2-1 win over the league's #1 team, the Winnipeg Jets. This is not how we thought this Friday would go, but look at us living our best life here. Do want to quote Catalina, one of our insiders. She said, I had to give that penalty kill a standing O. It deserved it. As a theater major, I know what deserves a standing O and what doesn't. So let's talk about probably the biggest moment in this game, Emma. 5-on-3. It was towards the end of the second period. Colton Sissons, one of the Predators' best penalty killers, in the box for interference. Immediately, Nick Blankenburg, who has spent a lot of time up here playing on the PK, follows him into the box for a delay of game. Nashville, in essence, has to now kill off, I think it was like 155 of a 5-on-3.
Yeah, it was 6 seconds after the Sissons penalty. Blankenburg puts the puck into the crowd, and you just kind of see tense up, like, oh God, like,
yeah, just deflate.
You're just watching with one eye closed, like, oh God. And even Andrew Burnett said when we talked to him after the game, he was like, yeah, you usually don't get out of those. Don't get out of those situations. So it was 154 of 5-on-3 with a Winnipeg Jets power play that is the best in the league. It was, I think they entered the game with, now I can't remember.
It's
it
like
was
30 some percent, isn't it?
Like 30, like 31%. Like, yeah. It's insane. And yeah, so, and then you're giving them a 5-on-3. Come on now. I mean, the Predators had successfully killed off a penalty in the first period, but that was only 5-on-4. So this was, we all just kind of held our breath, like, oh God.
And it was like, you had that moment of, this is when the wheels come off the bus. We felt really good about that first period, but okay, this is it. This is when it happens.
Because we've been here before. We know how this story ends. And so it was, but I mean, so you had 5-on-3. I'm trying to remember, it was O'Reilly, Shen, and Shea, I believe, who were out there first. to
Yeah.
kill. And then I think Mike McCarron came out for O'Reilly to finish it off. But oh my gosh, like that was insane. In the 154 of power play time of the 5-on-3 power play, Winnipeg managed to get off 7 shot attempts. One was blocked by Ryan O'Reilly, I think broke his stick, and that's why McCarron came on for him. 3 were stopped by Saros on goal, and 3 missed wide of the net. I mean, it wasn't for lack of trying. It's not like Winnipeg wasn't, putting the puck on the net or wasn't getting those chances. But I mean, it was an exceptional penalty kill by not just the 3 guys who were out there on the ice, but also Saros. I mean,
Unreal.
you need your best penalty killer to be your goalie, and Saros absolutely was. And that was like, I mean, the whole crowd gave him a standing ovation after that. I mean, I just kind of felt like, oh,
the roar when that door opened and Sissons came out, and then 4, 5, 6 seconds later, the door opens and Blankenberg comes out. And I don't know that I've heard Bridgestone that loud.
I
In
think
a long time.
Yeah, certainly not this year. It's been a while, but I think that, it's I even when Sissons came out, I got a little nervous because I was like, that's happened before too, where it's like the moment, just a few seconds after the penalty kill ends, and you think like, oh, okay, here we go. And then they allow a goal to score. Like that's happened multiple times this year as well. So I was like still not really convinced. And then Blankenberg came out, and I think it might have been Kyle Connor. Someone had a good shot attempt like right as the power play ended too. And I was like, oh God, this is gonna be it. and then Saros stopped it. And it was just like, where in the ever-loving Flagnog has that been all season? Like that was a masterclass. Now,
unbelievable.
Yes, to be a Debbie Downer, I will point out you shouldn't be in that situation in the first place against the top-ranked power play in the league, really against anyone. Let's not, follow up an interference penalty immediately with a delay of game. But either way, I think, the problem with this team and what we've said, or at least I've talked about before on the show, is that the difference between, the contenders and the pretenders, if you will, is like when the contenders get into those situations, they get out of them. And Nashville's issue has been like they get into those situations and that is their undoing, and it just ends them. Now, I'm not saying after one good penalty kill that the Predators are now contenders. They are not. But I think that, if they played like that with more consistency, we could be having a different conversation right now. So it's like, it's what's frustrating about this year, right? Because you see it and you're like, this is how it could be. Now, still, final score was only 2-1. And the goals came from, Philip Forsberg, but then the second one was from
Tommy Novak.
And it's like, okay, you're still not seeing Stamkos or Marchessault or anything.
We got to talk about that.
Whatever. Like, win's a win, I guess. But it is worth pointing out that it's like you brought these guys in to be your offense, and right now they are not.
They are not. Yeah. And I think that's, for as great a win as this was, I think you're right. Let's be real. This doesn't change anything about the outcome of the season. And it almost makes it more confusing. Like Macy said, wait a minute. Now, I thought we settled on the fact that this team was not good. What are you doing? But they have it. You talk about Juuse Saros. He really stole this game. You need your best players to be your best players. Yes, Philip Forsberg scored, and that's something we haven't seen for a little bit. But Steven Stamkos, what is this like? Is this 10, 11 games now with no points? It's the longest.
I think it's 11.
I think it's 11. It's the longest pointless streak of his 18-year career friends. You got to fix this before the end of the season. Is that going to change the outcome of the season? No, but you've got to get Steven Stamkos going. It was interesting to watch all of this unfold without Roman Yosi because, the power play, the Predators, like we said, Tommy Novak scored on the power play. And we talked with Andrew Brunette after the game about okay, penalty kill was the topic post game because that just changed everything. But what about the power play? And he pointed out, he's like, look, you have guys playing positions that they are very uncomfortable in. Gus Nyquist quarterbacking the power play. Now, Gus Nyquist is a power play guy, but quarterbacking the top unit of the power play, you've got guys that have had to shift positions on the power play. And yet they found a way to not only get a power play goal, but their last power play chance looked fantastic. We have to talk about the patchwork defense and what we can take away from it and what we really, really should not take away from the defensive performance last night. We'll talk about that in a second. If you're like us and you're staying up late to watch those Predators games and then have to get up early in the morning for work, we know your mornings may need to start with a great cup of coffee. But if you're tired of settling for grocery store brands that just aren't exactly what you want, you need to turn to Trade and find the perfect coffee for you. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of this country's top roasters. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you are new to coffee or you know exactly what you like, they have the perfect match for you. So how do I know this? Well, Trade has a quick quiz on their website, and in under a minute, they're going to match you with a coffee that takes into consideration not just your favorite roast and how you want your coffee to taste, but they also take into consideration how you make your coffee and how you like to drink your coffee. They're going to find you the perfect coffee for your morning cup. And if you don't love your first bag, no worries. Trade will replace it for free until they get it just right. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. That's drinktrade, TRADE.com/lockedonnhl for 40% off your first order. All right, Emma, we are going to pivot. We are no longer locked on Predators. We are locked on Mark Del Gaizo. We have waited so long to get Mark Del Gaizo back in the NHL. And let me just tell you, friends, if you didn't see the game, Mark Del Gaizo played with experience, with poise, and like he has 0 Fs to give. He was a maniac out there.
He was like a little wrecking ball out there, and it was so good to see. He finished the night with 5 hits, led the team with 5 hits. He had, I think, a couple of shots on goal as well.
Mhm.
He had 18 minutes of ice time, right up there with I think it was Shea and Blankenberg obviously led, as the top defensive pairing, but he was right up there with them. And I mean, I really liked, we didn't talk to Del Gaizo, but we talked to Juuse Saros afterwards, and he actually specifically mentioned him, and we didn't even ask, specifically about Mark Del Gaizo. He said, yeah, every time he comes up, I really like him. I like him playing in front of me. And that's like really, the highest compliment really from your goaltender. And
Yeah.
I mean, Mark Del Gaizo looked like a guy who does not want to go back to the AHL. And
No.
I think that, the way we talk about, and we've talked about it before, no one's going to replace Roman Yosi because one does not simply replace Roman Yosi. But you want a guy with experience, and you want a guy who is going to be defensively responsible and good in his own zone, which Del Gaizo was. I mean, he looked spectacular. Yeah.
Yeah, he was great. I also had this moment at the end of the game where I was like, I wonder if Nick Blankenberg woke up this summer and said, you know what's going to happen this season for me? I'm going to manifest that I am on the top pairing in the NHL. But he
against
was
the Winnipeg Jets.
against the number one team in the league.
Yep.
But look,
Sure.
Nick Blankenberg, you know, he has had some games where he has had some rough moments. Nick Blankenberg, I thought, held his own against the Winnipeg Jets. Now, here we also have to point out the Jets were on their second game of a back-to-back. They had played Ottawa the night before, so they had had kind of a longer flight, yada, yada, yada. But also, you know, Nashville has had its own struggles. This game was not going to be a gimme game for Nashville, at least. It felt like it was probably going to be for Winnipeg, especially because no Roman Yosi. And Emma, we talk about like what can we take away from this game, especially when it comes to the defense. I think number one, Mark Del wants to play in the NHL, and I think Mark Del is an NHL player. But now that's not news if you've been around Locked On Mark Del for long, because Emma and I have really liked his game and like what he brings. I think everybody stepped up their game defensively because they knew they needed to. Here is what people do not need to take away from this game last night. I cannot understand, and yet it will be out there, people who are like, you know what this game proves? This game proves the Predators need to get rid of Roman Yosi. Emma, I know we are only supposed to use family-friendly language, so I'm going to choose my words as carefully as possible. But the idea that this team is better without Roman Yosi is so ludicrous. Yes, the defense stepped up, and yes, they played at a level where they needed to play. And sometimes maybe you need your best guy not to be there so everybody else figures out what it really takes for them individually to play at a high level. Maybe. But the idea that you're going to trade Roman Yosi and you're going to get back something that is as valuable to this Predators team as Roman Yosi, I think that's a deal I just don't know that exists.
I think too, I mean, whoever is saying that the Predators need to trade Roman Yosi are probably the same people who were saying that they should trade Juuse Saros, because
Yes.
if you think for a second that either one of those guys are in the top 3, even top
Problems.
5 problems for the team this season, then you are not watching. You are not watching the games. And I think too that, you know, talking about Yosi, and you did see the team really come together. You know, that's the sign of a good leader. That's the sign of good leadership, because they rally around, you know, their fallen man and they go out and they win it for him. And I think that, you know, I forget who it was, or I don't even know if it's a quote or more of just an idea, but the whole concept of like the sign of good leadership is that the leader in question can step away and nothing changes, like, and everything still functions normally. You know, you don't need him there to, you know, because like he has helped instill the confidence, and you know, he's got a reliable team working around him. And I think that that is true with Roman Yosi. And again, this goes back to what we were saying. I mean, even what slightly different context, but still applies, I think, what Michael McCarron said after the last game against Florida, when he said, look, we've had our struggles this year for sure, but the thing about us is we're always going to play for each other. We're always going to stand up for each other. And a team, I just thought this was so powerful what he said, that McCarron said, that you can tell a team is broken if they stop doing that. And the Predators have never once stopped doing that this year. And so that's why, again, you know, people just want to be angry and they want to be inflammatory and they want to be lazy and pick on one or two things to say like, oh, this is the problem.
They want an easy scapegoat. And I get the want, but you have to deal with the reality. And the reality is there's not one easy scapegoat.
I don't have the patience for laziness like that. You know, like we analyze and break down and report on this team for a living. We spend a lot of time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears doing this. And for anyone to come in and just say, well, just got to trade Roman Yosi, like, that's honestly, it's disrespectful on many levels, not just to us, to him, to the Predators. Like, it's like disrespectfully lazy. And it's just, yeah, like you said, I understand the want, because it's human nature. You want,
Sure.
you're suffering and you want the suffering to end quickly.
And you
I
want it
get
to
it.
be a clean, and like you want to say, I'm going to make this decision and this is going to be fixed. And I think that is something that Predators fans, man, we have been stuck in the uncomfortable this season
Let me
because
tell you,
there
life
isn't.
too.
Yeah,
Nothing in
I
life, like
know.
no life conflict ends cleanly and
Cleanly.
easily where everyone's happy. And it's like, well, that's that. Like, that's
Yeah.
just not how life works.
Yeah.
And, here I am doling out, big life lessons on the Locked On Predators podcast. But I think that it is important to keep in mind that that is true with hockey as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that, with Roman Yosi being out, first of all, did get proof of life, did see him walking out of the arena last
Love
night.
it.
So
I'm
laid
so
eyes
glad
on him.
he was here for that. And I'm
Yeah.
so glad that the team had him there for that.
Yeah. So that's good to see.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that he is, you don't replace a guy like that. You just simply do not.
Yeah.
Also, can we just remind everyone that he has a no move
No
clause?
move.
So like he's not getting traded unless he
Yeah.
wants to be. And I can tell you with the utmost certainty that he does not want to
He
be.
does
So
not. Well, and you always have to remember, like, trade Roman Yosi, like, the team can win without him. The team won one game without him, and kudos to the team for that. Absolutely kudos to the team for that. But when you trade Roman Yosi, do you know what you are not going to get back? You are not going to get back a Roman Yosi. And you also are not going to get back that nebulous 1C that everybody is certain is just sitting right there and Nashville just keeps whiffing on. Like, so we'll talk about trades and we'll talk about moves and all that next week, as we get closer to the trade deadline. But for anybody that's like, this game proves that Roman Yosi needs to be out the door March 7th, well, friends, pull up a table at the chair and invite Roman Yosi to sit down because he's staying. This weekend, though, the Nashville Predators are not staying in town. As a matter of fact, they are traveling on the road. They have back-to-back games again. Man, feels like a lot of back-to-backs, Emma. Either that or I'm getting old. It feels like a lot of back-to-backs this season. They are
no, it
going
is.
It is. They're going to New York. They are taking on the New York Islanders Saturday morning. Friends, it is an 11:30 a.m. Central Time puck drop. So choose your sleeping in, your morning chores wisely. 11:30 a.m. puck drop against the Islanders. Islanders just snapped a 4-game losing streak last night. They beat Boston. Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, they are going to take on the New York Rangers and Peter Laviolette, who I have to say, hanging around like COVID. He just is not going away. Peter Laviolette, you go. They are 5-5 in their last 10. So I think this is going to be another good challenge. Here is the stat that shocks me. Nashville has only won 6 road games this season, Emma. That's bad, y'all.
See, it's shocking. It's shockingly bad, but having suffered through
Watched.
this season, I'm
It
like, yeah,
feels
no,
right.
that sounds. I'm like, 6? That many? Really? But I'm
It feels
like,
about what that's what it feels like.
yeah.
5 or under is how it feels. Emma, when you look at what the Predators did in Winnipeg, what do you think is the most important thing for them to carry into these back-to-back games in New York?
Well, the special teams need to play like that again. I mean,
Yes.
that to me, that was the biggest X factor in that win over Winnipeg. Not obviously the penalty kill. I mean, let's first like try to not be in the penalty box, but if we happen to end up there, let's kill penalties like that.
Yeah.
And then the power play as well. I even thought, the obviously, Tommy Novak had the goal on the power play. He was the part of the second unit. I thought that second unit looked really good. They were really feeling themselves.
Yeah.
And so I think that, I just want to see more of that. And other guys on that unit, like Luke Evangelista, I thought even had a good
Great
game.
game.
And
Yep.
and that's a guy who's been kind of struggling lately. So you want to see guys, build on that confidence and play, the way that we know they're capable of, in these two games.
You mentioned Philip Forsberg. For me, I think the best players are going to be key this weekend. Philip Forsberg scored first for the Predators against Winnipeg, and it was relatively early. I think that was a huge confidence boost. I think when you see somebody like Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault, Ryan O'Reilly score, it helps the other players on the team. So for me, I really want to see those guys step up. I would love to see Steven Stamkos get some goals this weekend. I just think he needs that. I think he really needs that. So for
I
me,
think we need that too.
we need that too, Stammer. I mean, don't take our feelings on. Another life lesson from Locked On Predators today. Don't take on other people's expectations, but we're going to celebrate with you when you're successful. I guess we should say it that way. But yeah, I think we need to see our best players be our best players again and see what the Predators can do in these two road games. And then on Tuesday, they go to Boston, and then they'll be back home next Thursday against the Seattle Kraken. But Emma, it is Friday. We are talking about a Predators win over the Winnipeg Jets, the number one team in the league. And yes, there were some factors that go into that. But friends, this season, we celebrate Predators wins like it's 1999.
We don't get many of them, so we celebrate them when they do come.
We do. So want everybody to just enjoy this feeling of the Predators win. Remember, puck drop tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Central Time against the Islanders. On Monday's show, Emma and I are, of course, going to recap everything that we see in this back-to-back in New York, and we'll get you ready for next week's games as well. Before we log off, Emma, let everyone know where they can find you and your work.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at ANK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that's going to do it for this week at the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day and for joining in through this season that we're covering. We'll be back on Monday with an all-new episode. We'll see you then.